Frank Sutton became permanently etched in the memory of millions through a commanding presence defined by explosive shouts, piercing eyes filled with intensity, and the unmistakable posture of someone who seemed born to lead. On television, he stepped into the role of Sergeant Vince Carter, a loud and often intimidating figure within Gomer Pyle, USMC whose mere appearance could instantly trigger laughter across the United States. Yet the man behind that performance lived a life that stood in sharp contrast to what audiences saw. Beneath the surface of the shouting sergeant was someone shaped by hardship, molded by war, and hardened by real-life experiences far removed from scripted comedy. Before ever wearing a fictional uniform, Sutton had lived the reality of one, having endured the harshness of combat and the discipline of military life. What makes his story so compelling is not simply the fame he achieved, but the striking divide between his public persona and his true self. While viewers came to know him as a fiery and short-tempered authority figure, in reality, he was quiet, reflective, deeply disciplined, and carried emotional burdens that were never easily expressed. His journey included surviving the chaos of war, enduring years of struggle to be taken seriously as an actor, and eventually becoming so closely tied to a single role that it overshadowed the rest of his identity. He was not someone who rose easily to fame. Instead, he carved his path through persistence, often concealing his own struggles to appear composed and strong. Looking deeper into his life, it becomes clear that the voice of Sergeant Carter was not merely a comedic tool. It echoed something far more personal, a reflection of a man who had experienced more than most and carried unseen battles within himself. Few could have imagined that such a commanding on-screen figure came from a childhood marked by limitations rather than power. Born on October 23, 1923, in Clarksville, Tennessee, Sutton grew up during a time when life was anything but easy. The Great Depression shaped his early years, turning even the simplest necessities into sources of concern. In such an environment, artistic ambitions were not easily nurtured. However, what developed instead was resilience and a quiet strength that would define his character for the rest of his life. His early years were not filled with dramatic moments, but with stillness and observation. After moving to Nashville, Tennessee, life did not significantly improve. Personal losses and family struggles forced him to grow up faster than most of his peers. These experiences shaped him into someone reserved and self-reliant, someone who rarely depended on others. Yet even within these constraints, he found an outlet. While attending East Nashville High School, Sutton discovered the stage. Through school plays and community performances, he found a way to step outside his reality. Acting allowed him to express what he could not in everyday life, giving him a space where he could transform into someone else entirely. This passion did not burst forth dramatically, but grew quietly and steadily, mirroring his own personality. By the time he graduated in 1941, he already had a sense of purpose, even though the path ahead remained uncertain. Just as his aspirations in acting began to take shape, global events changed everything. The attack on Pearl Harbor forced him into a decision that many young men of his generation faced. He initially sought to join the Marine Corps, drawn by the ideals of discipline and strength. However, he was rejected after failing a color vision test, a seemingly minor detail that closed one path entirely. Refusing to accept that as the end, he enlisted in the United States Army instead. From 1943 to 1946, Sutton's life shifted dramatically as he became part of the Pacific Theater during World War II. Serving in the 293rd Joint Assault Signal Company of the 6th Infantry Division, he was placed directly in dangerous combat situations. 14 amphibious landings became part of his experience, each one a confrontation with a thin line between survival and death. He served in regions such as Leyte and Luzon, later continuing into the occupation period in Korea. These years transformed him completely. Rising to the rank of sergeant, he earned both the Bronze Star and the Purple Heart, honors that reflected not just participation, but direct engagement in the realities of war. However, the true impact of those experiences could not be measured in medals. It lived in his posture, his expressions, and his reactions to pressure. or taught him lessons that stayed with him for life. Fear could exist, but it must never be visible. Pain did not need to be spoken. Exhaustion was something to push through rather than surrender to. These principles became deeply ingrained, shaping both his personality and his approach to acting. When he later portrayed Sergeant Carter, he did not rely on imagination. His performance drew from lived experience. The tension in his voice, the control in his anger, and the precision of his movements all reflected something real. After the war, Sutton returned home not as the same person who had left, but as someone fundamentally changed. Instead of rushing directly into acting, he chose to rebuild himself through education. He enrolled at Columbia University School of General Studies, where he approached his studies with the same discipline he had learned in the military. In a post-war New York, he immersed himself in learning, eventually graduating cum laude in 1952 with a degree in drama. This achievement represented more than academic success. It was a deliberate effort to regain control over his life. The early years of his career were not marked by immediate recognition. He worked in radio, live television, and small theater productions where precision was critical. These environments demanded quick thinking and total control, reinforcing the discipline he already possessed. Sutton treated every role, no matter how small, with complete seriousness. Over time, this approach built a reputation for reliability. He appeared in numerous television series, including The Goldbergs, The Twilight Zone, Gunsmoke, and The Untouchables. Though his roles were often small, they allowed him to refine his craft and establish himself as a dependable character actor. In 1955, he appeared in the film Marty, a modest production that exceeded all expectations. With a budget of around $343,000, the film went on to gross over $3 million, winning the Academy Award for Best Picture and the Palme d'Or at Cannes. Although Sutton's role was not central, his involvement marked an important turning point in his career. Despite this success, he remained a familiar face rather than a widely recognized name. This changed in 1963 when he appeared on The Andy Griffith Show as Sergeant Carter. What was initially intended as a minor role quickly stood out. His performance carried an authenticity that resonated deeply with audiences, leading to the expansion of the character. Soon after, he became a central figure in Gomer Pyle, USMC. With the show's success, Sutton became widely recognized, and Sergeant Carter turned into an iconic character. His military background gave the role a realism that set it apart. The show achieved high ratings, and he became a regular presence in American households. However, this success also created limitations. He became closely associated with a single role, making it difficult to branch out into other opportunities. When the show ended in 1969, Sutton faced a challenging transition. He returned to smaller roles and theater work, but the stability he once had disappeared. In his personal life, he had married Toby Igler in 1949, and they had 2 children, Michael and Amanda. Throughout his career, she provided steady support, maintaining stability as his professional life fluctuated. By the early 1970s, Sutton's career had settled into a quieter phase. He continued working in theater, traveling from city to city and maintaining his dedication despite fewer opportunities. His discipline never faded, even as public recognition declined. In June 1974, while performing in Shreveport, Louisiana, Sutton suffered a stroke on stage. It was sudden and without warning. He passed away on June 28, 1974, at the age of 50. His death was abrupt, with no final farewell, reflecting the unpredictable nature of his life. In the years since, Sutton has been remembered not for awards or leading roles, but for his precision, discipline, and unwavering reliability. His portrayal of Sergeant Carter continues to resonate, influencing future performances and maintaining its impact even decades later. His legacy is not defined by fame, but by the consistency and authenticity he brought to every role. Frank Sutton's life was shaped by persistence rather than chance. From the battlefields of war to the stages of theater and television, he carried himself with quiet strength. Though he is no longer here, the character he created endures, serving as a lasting reminder of the depth and dedication he brought to his craft. As the story of Frank Sutton comes to an end, what truly remains is not just the memory of Sergeant Vince Carter, but the quiet strength of the man behind it. His journey was never about easy fame or endless spotlight, but about discipline, endurance, and showing up with unwavering commitment no matter how small the stage became. Even today, his presence still echoes through every rerun, every remembered scene, and every performance shaped by the same kind of precision he mastered. If stories like this remind you of the deeper lives behind familiar faces, make sure to subscribe and stay with us for more untold journeys that deserve to be remembered.